Ladies, gentlemen, and Haradrim of all ages, the Vessel of Hatred expansion is coming out for Diablo 4 in just a couple of weeks from now. And with it comes the biggest changes that the game has seen since its release. This is no mere season, it is an expansion. And on top of just being a massive amount of new content, it's also something that you have to pay for to access the majority of it. You can still interact with Season 6 for free, and future seasons of course too, but the new region, Nahantu, the class Spiritborn, the new activities, and the powers associated with all of that are all locked behind the expansion paywall, which makes this a sort of really big and important moment for the game when this releases. This expansion will answer a relatively simple question: will Diablo 4 continue to not just survive, but also flourish and thrive and grow to be a better and better game over time as it has been, or is this just sort of the end of the line? There is an extremely vocal group out there, and we see them on every one of our own videos in the comments as well, talking about how Diablo 4 is a dead game, how it's a bad game, how we're all dumb for playing it, whatever you want to say, I guess. But the point is that these people do exist, and they weren't there at the game's base launch, and only started popping up after some rough patches of updates happened for the game. Things like Season 1 and the balance patch that started that all off, or Season 3 just being extremely lackluster, and whenever these sort of events happened, the voices grow louder and the group grows larger. And if you listen to them, you'd think there was no reason to be playing this game anymore and that no one actually did. However, I want to be extremely clear that the people who act this way and say these things are actually not the majority of the people who play or played Diablo 4. Far from it, in fact. Hell, I would hazard a guess and say that anyone saying those things hasn't even played the two most recent seasons of the game at all, because both Season 4 and Season 5 have made compounding exceptional changes to increase the quality of the game across the board in a way that shows not only are the developers interested in making the game better, but that they have some pretty good ideas for how to do so as well. I'm not going to walk in here and say that the game is now flawless. No, it still has a fair bit of work to do and places to improve, but it's not what the dissenting voices say it is by any means. It's not this just bad thing that refuses to change in any good way. It is changing, and it is getting better. That said, Diablo has been on a real upswing, and for reference of this, we have the Steam charts of the current player base for the game on Steam. Obviously, not only is PC not the only platform for the game, but Battle.net has a larger player base on PC than Steam itself does too. So this is essentially just the best trackable sample size to show the waves in players. It's not the full number. Don't pay attention to the number of players, pay attention to the actual graph and the sort of flow of it. The game was less popular when first released on Steam in Season 2 than it became right at the start of Season 4. Then its second highest peak was at the very beginning of Season 5, which has actually kept relatively consistent since then. Again, a lot more people than they had at the launch of the game on Steam. The Diablo experience is extremely unique among games, and even in the world of ARPGs, Diablo sits upon the specific throne of approachability and highly immersive storytelling, as well as just having great accessibility functions as a game. The world design in this game, the campaign, the lore, the cutscenes, and the sheer ease of gameplay, until you reach proper endgame purposeful challenges, of course, allows even the most casual of player to enjoy the majority of what the game has to offer. And that's the big audience that grabbed the game and ran off with it. That's the audience that has made the game super successful, and that is the audience that is most likely to not care too much about the seasons in between, but definitely will care about an expansion that promises more new world design, a brand new campaign, new lore, a new class, and that same level of immersive storytelling packaging it all together. Essentially, that's the long way of saying that this game will always have an audience willing to play it, especially with an upward trend in quality with updates, which we are now firmly on. But the quality of this expansion is what will truly matter, not just for the next few months, but for years to come in the live service model of Diablo 4. The original vision for the game that we know of was to release one expansion every year. Every single year. We don't know if this is still the case, of course, but we know multiple expansions is definitely the plan regardless of timeline. And so this becomes a very important moment. If the expansion is game-changing in a good way, if it is big in a positive direction, if the quality of the new region, the new class, or the new campaign is all to a high enough standard that it reminds people of how it felt to first go through the game, if not better, then of course the expansion will do well, and it will bode very well for the future of the game, leading into more expansions coming in future years too. It will build up a sort of trust of an expectation of quality. Regardless of the endgame gameplay, the mass amount of people who played the base game didn't really stick around for deep endgame or for seasons. They came for the story and for the world, and they will come back every time that more story and more world is added in, as long as it is still up to that same standard. So in that way, if they nail that aspect, then the game will always have a level of success tied to it even in future years. Pretty much everlasting until they miss the mark on an expansion. However, there is also the entire rest of the package that that matters to the rest of us. Because while the majority of the people who played the game do so for the sake of the experience, the majority of the time played within the game lays with those who love the endgame systems, who love ARPG grind sessions, and who devote themselves to each and every season that comes out for the game, making the most out of at least one character or build and just play a ton. These are generally the players who will buy loads of cosmetics in the shop as well, which they obviously want to encourage, and so of course the developers want everyone to be happy here, not just the casual players. That said, the more endgame focused seasonal crowd has been eating relatively well the last few months as well. As I mentioned before, the game has hit higher levels of player base in Season 4 and 5 than it has since the very beginning, and the main reason for that is that they are just making really big, sweeping, but meaningful changes, and word of mouth is spreading that back to the people who gave up on the game previously. But the expansion also gives a sort of opportunity for new players to jump on the bandwagon once more, to hop in without feeling like they are too far behind or out of the loop, so again this will be very telling for that reason as well. The main thing that remains to be seen, at least in my eyes, is how well the expansion will retain people after the first couple of months, how much this surge of player base will last. Will it end before Season 7 even starts, or will the game ride this wave all the way until its next expansion? Obviously only time will be able to give us the answers to that, but the best way of achieving this is to appeal to the largest crowd possible. From the look of it, the cutscenes, the campaign, all of the people who just want the story to be continued will be happy regardless. It looks like they're hitting the mark on that, of course. So the question mark really all lays with the new activity, with the functionality of the new class, the Spiritborn, and at an endgame level especially, because I have played it in early game in an early access event at Blizzard HQ, and I can tell you that this class is fun as all hell to play, and while it remains to be seen how strong it will be in the endgame, it is pretty obvious as a game design philosophy that you would rather have the big new class that you're adding to the game be overpowered than underpowered, so I would expect that to be reflected in the gameplay. The question is just how it feels as opposed to the pure strength. And the thing is, this class is also sort of a theory crafter's dream, which in itself appeals heavily to the more endgame and seasonal focused folks that I was talking about before. It has an incredible amount of depth to the class, it has a surely staggering number of different ways you can build it, and again, once you actually have a build set up for it, it's just plain fun to play. The other questions then come with the mercenary system and how it feels to actually use, if it feels like a forced thing that you have to reach the power levels to do the challenging content. However, the actual difficulty scaling in the PTR, without the mercenary system even existing, did feel pretty telling to say it will just sort of be a bonus rather than something that is required. As well, there was Cuirassed Undercity as an activity, and whether it will stay relevant on high difficulty in endgame, which we just don't know, and the Dark Citadel as the series' first co-op required dungeon activity, and how that will function and how players will react to it too, and of course, how much people are willing to do it week after week to get their rewards and just to actually experience the whole thing. Personally, at this stage, I'm fairly optimistic for the expansion. The game has been on an upward trend of quality in general. It feels like they found their footing, and while there were some awkward bits along the way inside of the PTR that we played a few weeks ago, that's sort of exactly the point of the PTR existing, right? And Season 4 and Season 5 both proved that changes made after a PTR could significantly enhance the experience, and so really I'm expecting some pretty good things to pop up when they tell us what the changes are in a stream that'll happen in the next couple of weeks. Put simply, on some level, this expansion will always be the sort of last chance for Diablo 4 for a lot of people, because those people specifically just haven't really been interested in the seasonal content that is based on long-term game improvements. But the expansion is a proper injection of new stuff, new actual content for the game, and we've been told that Season 6 as well, which happens at the same time, will have full-on seasonal powers tied to it, more like the first 3 seasons. So at least in a theoretical sense, it has a decent chance of hitting the mark and bringing players who quit the game in the past possibly back in, whether casual or not. They are trying to make sure that there is a lot of this game for everyone in the expansion. Personally, I just view this as the next step for the game. If it is a bad step that winds up falling down a staircase, then future expansions will be much less of an intriguing thing to actually ponder. But if the expansion is high enough quality to be received with praise, it will set this game up for a very strong run as a live service product running in to the next few years. That's it for today then, everyone. Just a sort of discussion about the state of Diablo 4 and its player base and how all of this may or may not change when the expansion releases in a couple of weeks. Things will change in the community when this happens, of course, though whether for better or worse is simply yet to be seen. So let's just hope for better. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.